Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at the law of demand. The law of demand is a concept that holding all other things equal, so basically what that means is if we keep all other factors constant, that's what ceteris paribus means. Everything else is constant. We're not changing anything except the price. So the law of demand holds that holding all else constant, as the price of a good or service rises, its quantity demand falls. And as you can see in this graph, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. So at this point here, at the higher price, we have a lower quantity demanded. At the lower price, we have a higher quantity demanded. And the reverse is also true. The lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. So demand is high here, demand is low here because of the low price. There's three reasons why the demand curve shifts down, or why there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. And the three reasons are: one, the income effect. So basically, when prices increase, certain people can no longer afford the product. So the affordability issue. So as we all know, when prices are higher, people might not have the purchasing power to purchase the product, and therefore they fall out of the market. So you see this at an auction. When the prices start to rise from 800 to 900,000, certain people can no longer afford it, and they drop out of the market. The second one is the substitution effect. As prices increase, people will substitute out of products into other products. So for example, if we were looking at the market for iPads, if iPads started to increase in price, people would start to substitute into similar products. Now, it might not be identical products, it might be things like laptops or Macs or things like that, but there will be a substitute into other products. So the same thing if we're looking at iPhones and Samsung Galaxies. If iPhone prices increase, people will substitute into Samsung Galaxies. So another reason the demand curve slopes downwards, or when there's a higher price, people will substitute into other products. And the third one is what we call diminishing marginal utility. And you'll learn about this concept in Chapter 1. So the higher price means that some consumers do not purchase as much of the item because of less satisfaction. So what I'm saying there is, if say we were selling paddle pops for $1, and the satisfaction I get from, say, eating the first paddle pop was, say, $5 worth of satisfaction, and the second paddle pop that I eat was $3 worth of satisfaction, then I'm going to buy at least 2 paddle pops at a price of $1. But if the price of paddle pops increased to $4, then I'll still buy one because I'm going to get the satisfaction out of the first unit, but I'm not going to buy as many. I might not buy the second one because I know my utility that I gained from eating the second paddle pop is only $3. So because we're experiencing diminishing marginal utility, some people will purchase less of the product at a higher price, and therefore the overall quantity demanded will be less. So they're the three reasons the demand curve slopes downwards. Okay, it's really important that you understand the difference between a contraction and expansion in demand and a shift in the demand curve. So if the price of a good or service changes, that's going to cause either a contraction or an expansion in demand. So looking at this graph here, if prices rise, so if prices go from P1 to P2, we're following up the curve, we call this a contraction in demand. The quantity demanded will be reduced from Q1 to Q2. And that's because the higher price leads to a lower quantity demand. Any movement to the left of the demand curve is called a contraction. We're not shifting the curve, this is just caused by a higher price. And a movement to the right, or a movement down the demand curve, is called an expansion. Okay, we're moving from Q1 to Q3, we're demanding more of the product because of the lower price. So moving along the curve, because of a change in price, that's the only thing that causes a contraction or an expansion. An expansion caused by a lower price, contraction caused by a higher price. And then we have shifts in the demand curve. Now what a shift means, it's not caused by price, it's caused by other factors other than prices of the good itself. So what it means is that at any given price now, we're demanding more or less of the item. So at this point here, we've moved from D to D1. At a price of $60, we were demanding $500. Now we're demanding, I don't know why that says $300. This is a really bad graph because the further to the right should be higher. So say this was $800. I apologize for that. At a price of 60, we've gone from demanding 500 to 800. Demand curve has shifted to the right. We're now demanding more at any given price. Okay, if the demand curve had shifted to the left, then I'll just draw a fake one in here. Okay, that means that we're now demanding less at any given price. So at a price of $60, we might be demanding 200 units. So I could put 200 in there. At any given price, we now have less demand for the product. And here are some factors that cause a shift in the demand curve. And you need to be aware of how all of these factors shift the demand curve, and we're going to go into some of them in more detail in the next video. But the first one, disposable income and taxes. If people have a higher disposable income, then they can demand more of a product at any given price, okay, and therefore demand will shift to the right. If disposable income goes down or taxes go up, the demand curve for any given product will shift to the left. There are some exceptions though, and we will go into that later. If something comes into fashion, then demand curve will shift to the right. So if when Tarzos came into fashion, we demand more at any given price, and therefore the demand curve shifts to the right. Good example. Price of complementary and substitute goods we'll look at in the next video, as well as consumer sentiment. Population, a higher population will lead to a higher demand at any given price because there's more people demanding that product. Demographic change is another good example. So for example, if we have more old people in society, that's going to lead to an increase in the demand for certain medication, for prosthetic limbs. Anything that old people are more likely to demand will increase in price because there'll be a shift in the demand curve to the right. Interest rates affect our discretionary income. Okay, be careful, direct taxes affect disposable income. Interest rates affect discretionary income. If interest rates go up, that will generally lead to a reduction in demand for all goods and services at any given price. And another good factor is advertising. If we successful advertising will also shift demand curve to the right. Okay, in the next video we're going to look into a bit more depth about some of these demand and supply side factors, or in this case demand factors.